And let Elizabeth take it away.
Sorry, I was making sure I hit the right buttons. Good morning or good afternoon, I guess. So this started because there was some conversation on the listserv about STEM kits. Anchorage Public Library has been circulating STEM kits since about 2019, and I know other libraries have been doing it at other times. So we thought rather than keep crossing on the listservs, we do it all at once and have a conversation. So as I said, I'm Elizabeth Moreau Nicolai, and I'm the Youth Services Coordinator for the Anchorage Public Library. I didn't know if the other panelists wanted to take a quick second to introduce themselves.
Hi, my name is Ani Thomas. I'm the Youth Services person for Kodiak, Alaska, and we do have some STEM kits here, so I'm happy to contribute today.
Hello, I'm Amanda. I'm the program coordinator for the Seward Community Library Museum. We do not yet have any STEM kits, but we're in the process of developing them.
I'm Kathy Morgan in Toke. We don't have any STEM kits, but I'm really excited about the idea, so I'm hoping to learn a lot about them.
Okay, I'll go forward. Very casual. If you have a question today, please just stop me. I might say, hey, it's on my next slide, but just go for it. So there's a couple of different types of kits. There are STEM kits, which is mostly what I'm going to talk about. There's discovery kits, which might just be the same thing, but with a slightly different name. And this is also, there's sort of a difference between circulating kits that we expect to come back to us that we're checking out like a regular item versus program to go packets, which we've been doing this summer, which are sort of a one-way transaction. It's the program supplies, it's the coloring sheet and the scissors and the glue stick, and we don't expect any of that back. So today we're really talking about the circulating kits and not those program packets that I know we made in a lot of other libraries. I know a lot of you guys did them too for the summer. So this is two-way, not one-way. And then there is a difference between family kits and educator kits, or at least at Anchorage Public Library, we decided to draw a difference. And I'm going to talk about that right now. So a family kit for us is something that has enough supplies that 1, 2, maybe 3 children could use it with an adult. And the idea is that this is something a family would use together. We are looking at creating educator kits in the future, and these would be for groups of 6 to 10 kids that you could use with a classroom or a homeschool co-op or like a scout troop or something like that. And so every now and then educators come in and they're like, I really want my whole class to do it. And that's not what these are designed for. We do have educators and teachers in the before times, before COVID, who would check out our kits and they'd set them up as stations. So if you finished your math sheet early, you could go work at the kit as a station. But like I said, that was not our primary target. And if any of my other panelists just want to jump in.
Thanks. I was just going to mention, sorry, I had some audio issues earlier, but I'm James Adcox here, a panelist from the Kenai Community Library, and we're just beginning the process of making kits. Thanks.
So when you plan to add your kits, we got started. This is something I had in my mind for probably 4 or 5 years. I'd seen a few other libraries doing it. I'd really wanted to do it. I didn't have money. We got a very large grant called Project Build that's not really currently being reoffered, but and it included kits and story kits and activity centers in the library and programs. And I ended up putting about 80% of it towards kits. And so that grant was extremely large. We also have done a lot of fundraising, both on our website, and we've done a few like direct campaigns where we email and mail donors and we say, hey, can you sponsor a kit? Like, you know, and you love an engineer and they have everything they've ever needed in their life. There's nothing that they want for their birthday. Buy them a kit for the public library. Or, hey, this person's retiring in honor of their long career as a science teacher. Buy them a kit for the public library. And we did, so I had my initial large grant. My second round, we did with an email campaign, and basically every engineering town and firm in town gave us some money. Renewable Energy Alaska, which is a lobbying group, gave us some money, and a bunch of like individual families gave us money, and like consulting firms and accounting firms, lots of people that had never really given to us before did. And we raised about $2,500 in there. And then we also got another larger grant from Verizon. So when you see what I have, it's going to be like, whoa, keep in mind, I have 300,000 people and I've probably spent close to $15,000 in kits in the last 2 years. So keep in mind the scale we're working on. So that's for fundraising. For working, I'll talk about costs specifically later. We worked with our local schools, and we talked to our science education coordinator for the Anchorage School District. They just rewritten their science curriculum, and we really tried to like match up. So the school district, about 5 years ago, in Anchorage School District, decided to focus on reading in elementary because our reading scores are so bad. As a result of which, kids in elementary are now getting 45 minutes of science a week, not a day, a week. It's abysmal, and families were worried. Upper income families are supplementing that like crazy. Lower income families can't. So for this is a really good, it's sort of an equalizer for families to help everyone be able to supplement the education experience. And when we worked with the school district, we found out what age level kids are learning what concepts. And when we created a kit around that concept, we tried really hard to match the books in that kit to that reading level where they would meet that in the school curriculum. And because ASD is following the NGSS, it should be fairly nationally aligned. And NGSS are the national standards. And I'd say, James, did you want to talk a little bit more about the homeschool need right now?
Yeah, I was just going to mention that, homeschooling, certainly not just on the peninsula, but I think across the state, is just the population has grown so much in the homeschool sign up this year. And I know that Elizabeth kind of mentioned earlier in a conversation today about the actual percentages, almost, doubling the amount of homeschoolers in certain locations. So the Kenai Community Library thought it was important to start to develop these kits with the homeschool audience in mind. And that was kind of one of our primary reasoning for looking into these.
And right now, it feels like almost everyone, whether or not you are formally homeschooling or not, is homeschooling of a sort as you support virtual school or hybrid school or whatever your community is doing. Other partners that we worked with Cooperative Extension. We had talks with the museum, still hoping to do some more with the Anchorage Museum. And the Anchorage Museum does their own fantastic kits, both that circulate and kits that go out into the public as program kits that are really very impressive. And Renewable Energy Alaska, like I said, gave us some money in their local renewable energy lobbying. So there's all sorts of people that haven't traditionally partnered with us at the library that we're excited to do this new thing. Again, like I said, defining your audience. If you're looking at families or educators, are you looking, really defining your scope. Like I said, we are defining that this is a two-way circulation, that we wanted it back. And we were defining that we were not creating something that was a whole unit study, especially if you look at like homeschooling resources, you'll see a science kit that's like a whole unit study that's supposed to last a semester. Ours is a single subject, a single activity, or maybe a couple of activities could be done with one kit. It easily can be done in the 3-week checkout period of a regular checkout item, and then it can be sent back. So we're really trying to keep this narrow. And I think it is so important to clearly define what you are doing with these kits before you start, because as soon as you create them, people will come to you and say, wouldn't it be great if, and they'll have an amazing idea. And it's a fantastic idea, but if it's not your goal, it may not be the right idea for you. Good ideas doesn't mean that they are the right ideas for you for this moment or for your library or what you can do. So I really, really encourage everyone to sit down and define scope and audience and how you think your community would use them. So this is a little bit blurry. This is just a little bit from the Anchorage School District website when I talked about, this is, K1 and 2, kind of like what they're getting in their 45 minutes of science a week. So, forces in motion, Alaskan animals. So that was just kind of what we worked with the school with. All right, so what's in your kit? For Anchorage Public Library, one of our important things is, because we've been doing this all with grant funding, and I never really know if I'm going to find another donor or another grantor, that we not do consumables. For us, it was really important that we basically made everything reusable except for the batteries. And where I could, I tried to put in a plug-in option. Everything, almost, I don't think any of our kits really have consumable pieces other than the batteries. And that's limited some of what we can do, but that's good. We do include books in every single kit, 1 to 3 books, usually but 2. We try to match the reading level of the activity interest level of that kit. We're a library. We try to keep the learning going. We try to include an educational, the first round of kits, I made these really great discovery sheets for every single kit that was like, record your findings and da-da-da. And that was like one of the few things that we were restocking in every kit, and like they were not being used at all. I don't know. So I still do some of them, but not as many. We do make sure we take the instructions that come with the kit. And for the most part, by kit, I mean STEM toy. It's a fancy STEM toy I'm buying online. I laminate them when I can. I scan them in, or if I go on the manufacturer's website and see if I can download the instructions, and I save them so that if the instructions go missing, I can easily replace them. We use a lot of these Connects education kits that are really fantastic. And they have these great teacher manuals with like extra experiments beyond what comes in like the build instructions. And they're like 90 pages, but they have all these extra instructions and learning methods. So I downloaded and printed those. And I have a print shop from the city, so I was able to spiral bind them. And that was really great. And then another thing that was really important for us in Anchorage Public Library, we don't want these kits to require any extra equipment or supplies from the people when they pick them up. I've done this with my kids where I get ready and they get excited about doing a craft, and I open it and I realize I need to go find like 12 other things that I may or may not have in my house. It was hard, like with coding toys. I made sure that the toy could work entirely by itself and you didn't need a smartphone or a laptop to plug it into. I wanted every family to immediately be able to access it. You could open and start going. You didn't have to go track down supplies that you may or may not have in your house. So that was one of our priorities. I'm going to pause and I'm going to, James and I believe Amanda have made sort of different decisions about consumables and things.
Yeah, I was just going to mention that with the we're trying to do what Anchorage is doing in terms of not using consumables, trying to keep our kits reusable. That did limit. We were hoping to have instead of just STEM, we wanted to offer STEAM and add that art component to it. So that was a challenging aspect of it. So we did look at some materials, and I wrote down the names of some of the items that we're ordering for our art kits, and it's a LED writing tablet, drawing board, doodle board, and it's reusable. And it doesn't, I mean, in terms of battery life and everything, it's just an LED. We might have to change the batteries every now and then a Zen artist board, which would require the patron to just get a little bit of water in the brush. So that would require just getting some water. But it's interesting because I love the idea of opening the kit up and not having to have, everything is included in the kit, not having to go scrounge for any materials needed. There was one other little kit that we were incorporating some augmented reality cards, they're flash cards, and that would require a smartphone. But we thought that the flash cards themselves offer great information, and if the parent happens to have a smartphone, they can use that smartphone to offer the augmented reality where the dinosaur comes out of the flash card. But we thought that's pretty cool. I mean, if someone happens to have the smartphone, they can really make those flashcards a little bit more interactive for the kids, and I thought that would be worth investing in. So we decided to do that. I was going to mention what Elizabeth talked about, what's in the kit, and one thing that Anchorage did that we loved. So we certainly made a brochure that was similar to Anchorage's, which was they also have a kit contents and replacement costs. And that, I don't know if you're going to get into that a little bit later, Elizabeth, but that was something we thought we have offered a lot of things that people can check out in our library, but we never include that replacement cost in it. And then patrons are always surprised later when they have to replace something when we have the information, but they didn't. So we prefer the very transparent upfront, hey, this is how much it costs to replace this. And so we're including that. Now we're starting to change all our other information for things that we check out from the library because we really like that much. So.
Thanks, James. I actually am about to get to that, but I was going to check in if Amanda or Annie had anything to add.
Hi, it's Amanda. We are looking at, in Seward, including some consumable items, again, with the STEAM, adding some art, things that are looking at what is easy and inexpensive to replace. So, for example, an origami kit, where you'd have to replace origami paper, but that's fairly inexpensive and easy to find, or doing the owl pellet dissection. So you'd have to replace the pellets themselves. However, again, they're fairly easy. Or writing implements for hand lettering or drawing kits, drawing paper, those kinds of things. But, we're still in process figuring out how we're going to have that organized. And some of it is that we are a small library with a small staff, and it's easier for everyone to remember, and we'll probably have some pop-ups with the cataloging. Thank you.
Hi, it's Ani from Kodiak here. We currently have 6 kits, all STEM kits. It's 3 different varieties, and we just doubled them. So we have tide pooling, bridges, and a light kit. And I'm looking into making some STEAM kits that will complement our community beekeeping project that we did this year. And I've got a lot of laminated photographs that are going to go in there, some bee books, some manipulatives, and I was thinking some consumables, coloring sheets that go through the life cycle and anatomy and stuff like that, as well as crafts. So that might be, I don't know exactly what it's going to be, but it might be pipe cleaners and pom-poms and different things like that that will be replenished each time it's checked in. So thanks.
So I did say we do have some discovery sheets. So this is for like our bridges kit. And this is, it asks the kids to build bridges and then has little weights to see if they could take them. And that was a little bit like of an addition. Like we bought the Connects bridges kit with Connects, and then we added in a set of weights. And so this is, letting the kids, giving the kids a place to give them a table to record their data. So we do replenish these somewhat. We have about 70 or 80 kits. So we have sort of all these like hanging signs about like, did you check this? Did you check that? It gets a little bit intense. So for the cost, so the average cost at APL, I actually did the math this morning, is $102. That's the replacement cost. And I'll come back to that previous slide, but this is the contents and replacement cost. This is up part of the brochure, and this is up on our website. Patrons can look at this before they check it out. This has the objects and the books and what the cost is. We charge a standard $25 packaging and processing fee. I'm going to so one of it is you see, it's that plastic box. It's the plastic envelope that includes all the sheets and all of the like brochures. It's the RFID tag and the barcodes and staff labor essentially for creating that. So when I'm saying these average costs, that's including that $25 packaging cost, which is probably a little bit high, but it's pretty standard for what Anchorage Public Library has done for other kits, as we consider that just sort of our standard packaging cost for a kit. So our cheapest kits are around $60, including that 25, and that's some of like the geometry, the probability, counting, magnets. And our most expensive are over $150 per kit, which are like the astronomy, the telescopes, and the binoculars, the big snap circuit set, a bunch of the coding toys and the GPS toys. So for replacement cost, we do try to list out as individually within that thing as much as we can. So I will, let me see, I think I might have missed something. No, okay, yeah. So one of the things I also wanted to say as one of my tips and tricks, but I'm gonna do it right now where I can still get to this picture. If you look at this Connects, it's got a ton of little parts. Some of them have like 100 or 200 parts in them, and nobody wants to count all of those when they came in. We bought a kitchen scale, and we know in a Ziploc bag how much all of those little pieces weigh. So when they come, and we have a chart taped up by the kitchen scale. And so when they come in, we weigh the bag. And if it is super off, then we pull them out and we start counting. And if you have lost 2 or 3 Connects parts, that's when I say plan ahead for replacement things. A lot of times with these toys, these kits, if I'm going to circulate 3 copies of the kit, I bought 4 copies of the toy. And I cannibalize the 4th one for replacement parts as they go in and out. It turns out that there is a whole marketplace and world full of people who will sell you just the one Connects piece that went missing. You can also call Connects and they'll start sending it to you. After a while, they're like, how many Connects kits do you own, lady? And you're like, I own a lot. Please keep sending me parts. But they've been marvelous. And so I've been really focusing now, as this is, like I said, my 3rd time buying them, and I'm currently adding from our big Verizon grant that we just got. And that's one of the things I've learned is to, as I'm buying a thing, to think about how I'm going to do replacement parts so that I don't have to charge a patron for the entire kit if they lost 2 little Connects wheels, to try to find a way to replace those. And sometimes I just call them and I'm like, can you look around for the 2 little wheels? And they come in like 3 days later and they're like, yeah, they were under my kid's bed. Sorry. That's not always possible, but sometimes they do. So where do you get the kit ideas? Okay, we started the grant, and the reason why mine are STEM and not STEAM focused is because this original grant, and it's through StarNet Libraries, and it was really STEM focused. It was 8 to 12-year-olds, so it defined my audience from the very beginning, 8 to 12-year-old STEM. In fact, they wanted it mostly engineering, and I had to sneak in anatomy and coding and stuff. They really wanted like civil engineering projects, so it was very specific. There are other public libraries. There's a couple there I've put in. You Google library and STEM kits. You go on my website, I have all of my stuff listed, all of my content insert sheets. If you email me, I will cheerfully email you the insert, like the discovery sheets or the worksheets I might have. I've also, I feel like I might have more STEM kits than most other public libraries right now in my wanderings through the interwebs. So right now, I'm honestly just reading a ton of STEM toy reviews on Amazon, Parents Magazine, all of those places. STEM Supplies is I don't know, I somehow got on their mailing list. Their catalog's fantastic. They have great stuff. I am one of those brand new homeschoolers this year. I'm homeschooling my daughter. So when I started looking around at homeschooling curriculums, I found that homeschool websites sell a whole other section of STEM toys and kit and things. Timberdoodle is a company. They're overpriced. Don't buy directly from them. However, they seem to find the best STEM learning items. And so I go to them, I found the really cool things, and then I buy them cheaper on Amazon. Definitely price shop around. We tend to mostly do through Amazon. It tends to be the cheapest, but I'm cheap and I will price shop around. I also, some of the stuff just comes from in town, from Fred Meyer, Walmart, Target, Over the Rainbow Toys, wherever I can grab it from. So packaging. So we mostly used, like I said, these great big plastic tubs. Our STEM kits do not circulate outside of Anchorage Public Library in large part. We don't send them out to the consortium because I do not have them packaged well enough to be mailed out without breakage. But these stack well, they do well. People seem to get them in and out in the rain and the snow. Everything seems to be working so far. These ones and you can see from when this is pictures I took for donors. So you can see that R&M engineer consultants donated all of those. Those are my donor labels I stuck on them, and people are very happy about it. So, and we're just grabbing these at Home Depot. So I'm going to pause and make sure before we start talking about circulating and marketing and things, if any of my other panelists have other things to add, or if anybody has questions.
I was just going to mention, so packaging, I have more of a question even as a panelist here, that we like the totes that the Anchorage Public Library was using and plan to reproduce that. But then you mentioned earlier that you're also using plastic envelopes, and it looked like a variety of sizes of plastic envelopes. Is that correct? Just for the instruction booklet and for your pamphlet, is that correct?
It is mostly one size of, I'm sorry, I'm going to flip through slides kind of quickly to get to it. You can kind of see it here. It's like a 6x9 plastic envelope. Okay. For the most part, we're doing half page for our educational worksheets. We call them discovery sheets. And those are mostly half pages. So they all seem to fit in there.
Thank you.
Yeah. And all of the kits that we have, our story packets and things, all have sort of a central envelope or things that's got that replacement card. And so people are used to looking for that, and it keeps all those papers from falling all out throughout the kit.
I have another question. I'm wondering how it's been going in terms of how often are you finding that you need to replace items or finding things broken, or other of those kinds of issues?
It's hard to say. I'll slip ahead a skit. This is our first year stats. You can see here we launched January 12th, 2019. We had 43 copies of 22 titles. By 1 year later, I had 88 copies of 30 titles. So I doubled the number of copies. And I had 8 that were in discarded or lost status. So out of, so there were 88 plus another 8 that had gone discarded. So over a year, that's basically 1 in 10, maybe. I feel like we call patrons and work with them as much as we can. And if it's just a couple pieces, they're circulating so much and so fast. As you can see, it's 943 circulations. Quite often, they would be constantly on hold and never in the building. I would say probably the average life cycle for a kit is about a year, year and a half before it starts needing a few replacement parts or pieces. But that's really heavy circulation. And we tend to be circulating 3 to 5 copies per kit. So if I'm going to buy 4 of something, I can buy the 5th copy and then just use it to replace all the little parts, which extends all the life. So that's, again, a question of scale.
Hi, Elizabeth. This is Julie. You mentioned that these are only available for Alaska residents. I was curious, how many kits can a person borrow at one time?
So they're only really available for Anchorage residents, Anchorage Public Library card holders. What we are currently doing is we don't have this item type set to a limit. So you can, in the catalog, check out as many of these as you want. However, we keep these in the back. I believe this is a picture from Amanda. Is this from your web library, this picture? No, Ani.
It's from Kodiak.
Oh, it's from Kodiak. Jane. Okay, perfect. It's from Kodiak. So this is not us. We don't keep ours out on the floor. we keep them in the back. So you have to ask a staff member for them. And so right now we try to say one per card, one per family. And especially because at first we just didn't have very many, 40 or 50 of them is not a lot for this whole city of Anchorage. So at first we were limiting to one. Now that we have so many more, especially with these last grants, and because we know people need them more, being stuck at home, not being able to go to school or to scouts or any of their normal things, they're really trying to find other activities and supplements. Now we are relaxing that, but it's sort of, we say one per family, but we don't always enforce that. Is that an answer? It's not, and it's not set in the catalog as one per family.
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Hi, this is Julie in Sutton, and I wanted to add in just on your focus. And like you said, yours are focused towards families, and I think that's probably what the majority of us would do. But I wanted to note, as a homeschooling parent, because I've been homeschooling for a couple decades, most of your programs, and not everybody's going through one, but most of your programs have these types of kits. They're amazing, and they're also available for families and or for education groups, and they would be a great resource for any of you who are involved with families or with any of these homeschool groups to kind of find out what they're already doing, as well as what you've got going on, Elizabeth, which looks outstanding, by the way. And I'm so thankful that you guys are putting this on.
I will admit, like I said, I am a brand new homeschooler. I'm a month into this journey, and I am with a charter school homeschool. And I know, James, I believe you talked to Idea Homeschool because they also have a lot of these resources as well, right?
Correct. And so when the Kenai Library was researching the kits, the first thing we did was look at the homeschool kits, and we found an idea that the kits were they were real robust kits with just a lot of literature in each kit. And then there were some hard items that we kind of felt a little intimidated by, certain rock samples and things like that. We checked out a kit, I think it was on volcanoes. And anyway, there was a lot more material than we thought maybe we could get our hands on or invest in one kit. So we ended up going more towards a specific, rather than kind of maybe a semester of information, we went with these kind of very specific kind of one interactive element to it, plus perhaps 2 to 3 books, and kind of kept it a little more individualized than these very robust homeschool kits from Idea.
That's exactly my finding as well, James. These programs have some, like you said, very robust, great kits available, but usually for what we would all be doing, they're quite a bit more, and duplicating something that's already available through the programs that these homeschoolers are using probably isn't what's really needed or what these families would be looking for.
I would agree. When we were developing them, our inspiration was not necessarily like those big robust kits that can like last for a semester. Our inspiration was more, if you guys are familiar with like the Kiwi crates or the box, all those box subscriptions you can buy, and once a month your kid gets a new STEM activity. And one of our board members, she said her kids were always asking for those, and she didn't want to spend, $30 a month on them. And she also then didn't want to have all the clutter in her house of things her kids were not going to consistently play with. And so what they do now is they come once a month to the library and they get a new kit, and that's their box kit for the month. And that was sort of more of our inspiration, that sort of one-time experience. Though I have heard from a few parents that the kids liked the thing we had so much that ended up being they would get their own as a birthday or Christmas present. Storage and display, we keep ours in the back because there are so many people in the library at the times when we allow people in the library, which we are not currently doing, that we know that people would take them apart and play with them, and pieces would get scattered and lost, and we had to do that as a control thing because our libraries are too big. We do have a brochure and a website for them. Amanda's boss, Valerie in Seward, had brought up the idea about safety. Do we add a liability warning or a choking warning? We don't. I really clearly label the age ranges. Our original grant said 8 to 12-year-olds, and that is what we bought for. The next 2 rounds of fundraising, I started buying for younger kids because we really found that people at the desk were asking us for a lot younger kids' materials. That probably the greatest interest level was from 4 to 8-year-olds. But I really clearly label the age range, and so I don't put choking warning labels on there because it clearly says ages 5 to 10 on the box, on the brochure, on the website, on the catalog record. And that is as much as I've gotten more. I hadn't worried about safety beyond that until Valerie brought it up. So I don't know if that is a little bit too naive of me. So for evaluation, continuation, and more, I wanted to show you a picture of this little girl. She checked out the kit on catapults, and included in the kit was a kit to build your own catapult, and then the extra book we had added was called Mini Weapons of Mass Destruction, which is about building catapults, among other things, out of homemade materials. So she used the extra book outside of what was in the kit, of the kit, like catapult kit, and she, with things from her own house, you can see it as a ruler, popsicle sticks, electrical tape, rubber bands. She built this catapult and she brought it in to show it to us, and she was incredibly proud of herself. And doesn't she look like a future scientist? Like, this is my favorite picture. I put this on, this is the picture that went out with our donor request to please sponsor a kit. So I think I talked a little bit about our first year statistics already. Our biggest lesson learned, besides weighing the connects pieces, which, by the way, we did not figure out until about 8 months into the project, and made our life so much faster once we did that, was planning ahead, buying an extra copy to cannibalize if you're going to circulate a lot of copies of something. Also looking at things and seeing how easy it is to get replacement parts if you need them. Our sustainability is a lot about continued donor funding. And someone had asked me about the justification. Right now, people, I think, our conversations at Anchorage Public Library have been around the lack of STEM education in the current elementary education focus. And it's gotten worse. I said it was 45 minutes a week. That was before COVID. Right now, in COVID, most elementary schools and neighborhood schools are only doing math and reading instruction with their hybrid and online schooling. They are not doing science as part of the regular elementary experience until that they restart schools, and we don't know when that will be, when they fully restart in person. So for us, and the fact that we are a library, we do try to keep it book related and tying in the books and the literature. I'm going to pause and see if anybody else has anything.
I'm not sure if you saw the chat, but there was a question from Kay Kresh about space. How much space do the kits take when they're not checked out? And then another question about a late fee if items aren't returned on time.
Anchorage Public Library went late fee free. So, which we did at the beginning of this year. And I was just sort of waiving fines because it was a grant funded program. I was just waiving fines as it was, but yeah, we're late fine free. So we're not doing late fines at all. Space, at first it wasn't a problem because they were all checked out. Now we're starting to have a lot more, and it's harder for people to get to us because our building's closed and it's only curbside pickup right now. So that is becoming a bigger issue for space. I was just today negotiating with my building manager about I need a different storeroom. We have a lot of kits, so they are taking a lot. An average, if you think somewhere between like the shoebox and the next size, bigger sized thing, I would expect that if you did 10 to 15 things, you would probably need one shelving unit for 10 to 15 kits, if that makes sense. Give or take if they were all in at once. I don't know how anybody else is feeling who already has them. And I actually can't see this chat because I'm sharing my screen. But yeah, and we do a 3-week checkout. I did see that just now.
Hi, this is Susan in Fairbanks. Very impressive, all these resources, just amazing. I'm feeling tired just looking at them. So I have a couple questions. Who did all the labeling and packaging and whatnot, and who checks them in and out? Is that your staff, or is that other people in the library? And then, you know, it's COVID. What are you doing with quarantining and cleaning?
Okay, so for all of our labeling, some of it was me, some of it was volunteers. I had an MLS student who was doing an internship who did a bunch of it. And because I'm currently, like I said, I'm currently spinning out 2 grants right now to add more. And because we're not open, I've got the staff time and availability to do it. I also have a support staff member who's only for youth. I have 2 of them who are only for youth services, who aren't for the rest of the building. And they're the ones checking in and checking out. And for quarantine, we just leave them on the table for 3 days before we check them in, just kind of like we're doing the rest. And I know the new Realm Sched study says maybe you need more than 3 days, but we're just treating it like another item with 3 days quarantine. I don't know if
Thank you.
James, if you
Because I
had
know that whole issue of check out and check in and checking parts at some libraries I've worked at would be a big issue. You mean I have to do that?
it was a big issue here, which is why I was lucky that I had a staff member to be able to dedicate to it.
Yay. Yay.
Like in the Kenai Community Library, we have yet to have the kits physically here yet. We're right in the stages of purchasing all the items and putting all this together. But we do check out board games, and we check out American Girl dolls from a grant, the American Girl dolls. But we're having to inventory everything as it comes in. And I just love the idea of a scale. I think for board games for the future, we might have a weight on each board game and just weigh the board games, because that just seems so much quicker and more efficient.
I got the scale idea off of the ALSC website, and somebody was doing it for their board game collection. And like I said, oh my God, it's made our life so much better. For our future plans, because so much is transitioning right now to direct learn at home, virtual learning, homeschool, we are buying things that I had previously passed off as being too homeschooly. The picture is of a math manipulatives kits, and some of us started having to teach kindergarten math in the spring without those counting cubes, and it turns out that's really hard. And by some of us, I mean me. And I would like to talk to Julie and Sutton, and I want to talk to Ani, because you guys are both homeschooling parents, and I am swimming right now. But that kit, we actually purchased that kit, and it was meant for small groups, and we were able to divide it up to being 2 separate. So I bought 2 copies of it, and it made 4 different kits. And that company sells all those parts individually. So I'm really excited about how easy it'll be to replace those things. So we're adding more things like that are a little bit more homeschooly, because while I know traditional homeschoolers will still go through their homeschool program, there are a lot of people right now who are pandemic homeschoolers. I'm actually in a Facebook group called COVID Made Me Homeschool My Children. And so I think they may not have that tap into the traditional program. They may not have that easy access to resources. Like I said, we are doing more younger kids stuff, because that was where a lot of the interest was. I'm still not going below about age 4. I have, I think, one that goes to about 3, but I'm really, and that's like a counting toy. And then we have a bunch of stuff we've purchased for in-person programs, and that works really good for groups of 5 to 15 kids. And we do want to eventually make what we're going to call them STEM educator kits that can be checked out for scout troops, for Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, teachers, homeschool co-ops. We do want to, and that's probably not going to be any new purchase. That's just going to be all of our current program materials, with the idea that our own librarians, when they want to run it as a program, can just check it out. And that's probably a 2021 project. It was a 2020 project, but then COVID happened. So, and that's just going to be reworking stuff we already own. So that's our future plans.
This is Susan in Fairbanks again, and it's taken me 45 minutes to remember, but there was a lady who came up to Fairbanks, I don't know how many years ago now, years ago, with the Civil Air Patrol. And they actually were giving away STEM kits at the time. And there were some pretty nifty kinds of things. We weren't able to take advantage of it at the time, and I don't know if they still are doing it or not, but they were free, and all you had to basically do was report on usage.
That was the thing. I thank you for saying report on usage, Susan, because that was the thing I mentioned. When we first did this, we were running under the Project Build grant, and they had a very specific survey they wanted us to do. And so we did it. We got great results. People loved the kits. It was fun. We've stopped that exact survey because we're no longer under that grant. But that's sort of, so we're sort of in the transition time of focusing on what kind of a survey we want to do for the future and what outcomes we want to measure. So that survey reporting ended basically about the same time COVID started. And it's honestly, coming up with a new survey and a new outcomes and new goals has not been at the top of my priority list. So right now, all I am measuring is circulation stats.
Thank you so much for this information. It's wonderful. What I wanted to ask you is, will you share your slideshow so we have access to the web links?
Absolutely, I will. And the last slide also has our email addresses. I will shoot this as an email to the ACLA listserv as well. And I know I owe Lori an email. You're on my to-do list, Lori, to send you an email. You asked for a couple of the inserts specifically.
No, well, it's just very inspirational. And of course, we modeled ours on what you had here, but you're extending it into the homeschool realm with this kind of thing that you're showing gives us some food for thought. So thank you very much for your time and your energy on this.
And still only a tiny little bit into the homeschool realm, because we still do have that you can only do this for 3 weeks. And if you need math manipulatives, you're probably teaching math for more than 3 weeks.
Right.
So
hopefully the school will provide that.
I have opinions.
Yes. Okay. Well, anyway, great presentation. Thank you.
So I've talked a bunch, and I welcome comments from anybody else who's doing anything, or any other questions, and I can't really see the chat. So if there's anything I'm missing in there, that'd be great.
Hi, Elizabeth. No, I don't believe you missed anything. I just added the link to Civil Air Patrol STEM program that Susan had mentioned.
And one thing I was just going to mention that I think Elizabeth might have mentioned earlier too is that she suggested joining homeschool groups, and I think my wife homeschooled 2 years ago, my 2 boys, and the network of other kits available through the park ranger service, through the homeschool idea office, and parents know about all these different places to get these kits. So there's a great smorgasbord of information on these homeschool groups. So I thought that was a really good suggestion by Elizabeth to join those groups and find out more, and then to publicize what your library will be offering soon.
Yes, there are so many fantastic kits. I know here in Anchorage, we have the Anchorage Museum is doing fantastic kits. The Alaska Native Heritage Center just produced a series of box kits that looked really, really cool. And I've also, I'm hoping to do, I think in the future, more collaborations with other groups like that. Because I'm not a scientist, I'm barely a homeschooler. I'm mostly a librarian. So I've been talking to people like, if you provide me recommendations and the wording for the educational instructions, I can happily find the books. That's the part I'm really good at. Only a very few of our kits are actually, I'm going to switch what I'm sharing. So give me just a moment, guys. Only a few of our kits are actually really are like things we created from scratch. Most of them, it's like I bought a toy off Amazon and I added a couple of books, or maybe I combined 2 or 3 toys. The few that, and I was double checking, we currently have 55 kits, and I've got about 12 more on order. One of the few ones that we created more fully was like our snow science kit. Give me a moment, I can show you that. If anybody else has questions or comments, please go.
I want to say thank you so much. Even though I'm on the panel, I'm taking notes. I'm learning a lot here, and I'm inspired to reach out to other partners in the community for sponsor opportunities and like the museums. I think that's fabulous. But also just lots of great energy and excitement here. If anyone has questions about, like we did a new program this year in Kodiak with the Kodiak Beekeeping Project, and it was a community beekeeping project. I'm sort of going backwards, how you said that your kits were a starter point for programs. I've done programs all summer for the beekeeping, and that's what's inspired me to make a kit for the people who weren't able to attend for whatever reason. So yeah, thank you so much for that.
Hello, everybody. This is Adrian from Nenana. I got Charlie and Joyce, 2 of my volunteers here as well. We just got a big grant through the Alaska Community Foundation for being able to set up a mobile library, STEM and art and craft project. So I appreciate all this information. You guys have done a wonderful job. Elizabeth, please, I would like to get a hold of you more and talk a little bit more about this.
I'm excited about that, Adrienne. Call me anytime.
Will do.
I'm going to share our Anchorage Public Library website, maybe. Button. Okay, good. Now you guys should all be seeing it. And so this is our website. As you can see, we leave sponsor a kit on there right here. And then as you see, we very clearly list, like, here's the kit name, the age, the description, the content list. You can pop it up, and the place hold button is right there. So I'm going to scroll down very fast, probably too fast. Snow Science is one of the few ones we sort of created on our own. And it just pops the kits up right there. All of this stuff about the scientific method and everything that came from that original grant. So, but yeah, our Snow Science kit is one of the few ones we made that wasn't just purchasing things. So.
And so I might mention that as a library who's just now developing these kits, as you were showing that brochure, it's, I hope Elizabeth is okay, but Kenai did not wheel. We made our brochure extraordinarily similar and just made every aspect of it very similar to Anchorage. And I just added a couple little, side notes and things like that, and just changed things up. But our brochure is going to be, just very similar. With just we loved how they had the age range and every aspect of it. So we are kind of found what we were looking for in the Anchorage Public Library, and then just added our own flavor to some things. So it's actually has been a fairly painless process of starting to develop these kits. The funding was one aspect of it, but we think we got that we got that where we're more under control.
Everybody should steal. Nobody should reinvent. Take it. If I have anything you can use, tell me and I will email it to you.
And the last thing I was just going to note too is that we did find, as we were researching all of it, so a couple of things I was going to promote is those augmented reality kind of things. Again, they're flashcards, but they look so cool. So I'm hoping that they're going to be cool since I'm promoting them right now. But it does look like it would kind of really fit into what we're trying to do. So I hope that they are as neat as they're being advertised and at a pretty good price. So I'm not sure if you've seen those or not, Elizabeth, but anyway, a lot of fun.
I actually was really curious. I was going to ask you after this, I was going to email you for a link because one of the new ones that we're building right now is a fossil excavation kit. Those might be kind of a fun thing to add to it. And I'm not opposed to an element that's cooler if you have the smartphone, but you don't necessarily need the smartphone or it doesn't work at all. Like trying to keep these very accessible for everybody.
So before we close out, Elizabeth, I just have one question. It sounds to me like you kind of start with the manipulative first, and then you kind of find a book that supports it. Have you ever had trouble finding a book to support any of these things?
Yes, I do. Or I'll order a book and then I'll go to replace it, and a year later and it's unavailable. Yes. And so sometimes I have had to not be as close on the age range as I would like to be. And then like I have Simple Machines as a kit on like 5 different versions of Simple Machines, and there just aren't that many Simple Machine books. So some of them I tried not to repeat books, but I think we ended up doing a few times. So yeah, for the most part, it's working, but.
Elizabeth, have you ever included a video or music component to your kits?
That's interesting. No, we have story packets that we check out for 5 and unders that have picture books and they have CDs with them. But we haven't with these. Interesting. I know the Anchorage Museum has been doing this huge focus on sound, and a lot of their kits are about sound and capturing soundscapes, and they're super cool. So I have that on my to-do list also to do more talking with Hollis from Anchorage Museum. And I would also encourage you all to talk to Hollis. She is amazing as well at Anchorage Museum at Rasmussen. And she always loves to work with everyone around the state. She is their education director.
Okay, but it looks like it's 2 minutes to 3. Do you want me to stop the recording, Elizabeth, or is there anything else that you want to share?
I don't have anything else unless anybody else has questions or ideas.
All right, well, I'll stop the recording.